Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to part 2 of Top 10 2020 History Games. And the very first game I'm going to show you is Port Royale 4. I'm not sure how successful the Port Royale series has been internationally, but in Germany, at least, and Europe, it was quite successful. Originated from a German company called Ascaron. And, well, we finally get a fourth part. This time, though, from Gaming Minds. You'll probably know them from Grand Ages Medieval and a few other historical games, so they have some experience with that. They have changed quite a few things about it, but first the basics. It's set during the 17th century in the Caribbean. You will basically build a trade empire and conduct trade between the various colonial nations in the area at that time. Around 60 cities should be represented in the game. It's of course in 3D. Various things like the wind, currents, and weather influence how you should build your trade routes. There are 4 different nations in the game. You can join more or less at the start and trade for them, and you can even conquer apparently some cities. The nations are Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands. There are around 50 buildings, so you can actually build up cities, but from what I heard, only 4 resources can be produced per city, so you have to build a proper trade system between your own cities, and of course, as you want to trade your resources and make money, to get more licenses to be able to trade in more cities and get better ships and so on and so on. You of course have to tie your cities properly together to get the max out of your production and your sales. Yeah, it's basically a trade simulation as you would expect it, just set in the Caribbean. A huge change to the old real-time battles, sea battles, is actually that you will have tactical turn-based battles. A certain German gaming magazine described it as Pirates meets XCOM. I like that. The developers apparently went for that because in the old games it was easy to outmaneuver the AI with small, fast ships, and that was kind of unrealistic. Just because the AI wasn't able to predict your movements properly, so that won't be able today. But in the new game, your ships will have certain special abilities. Apparently some ships can lay burning oil layers, and others just have a lot of armor, like the classic galleon. Don't expect, of course, ships of the line, because they weren't really a thing at this point in time. But a lot of boarding should be there, because that was more common at the time. Well, I hope this quick and short overview is enough for you, because they haven't released that many informations yet, but I will keep an eye on that, and I'm really interested in it. Next title on my list is Knights of Honor 2, and I'm ashamed to say that I didn't play Knights of Honor 1 15 years ago. I was deep into Medieval 2 at that point, so I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Well, what is Knights of Honor 2? Basically, it sits between Paradox Crusader Kings 2 and the Total War games, right in the middle. It is stoppable real-time, or semi-real-time, like Crusader Kings 2, but the battles are tactical battles as in Total War. So yeah, some rejoicing to be done. So the target is basically to have a deeper strategical level than Total War and fun tactical battles, like in Total War. The people behind Knights of Honor 2 are the same people that were behind Knights of Honor 1, largely at least. They're called Black Sea Games, and they largely consist of the guys of Black Sea Studios. And they have the same boss, Veselin Haniev. The old Black Sea Studios are nowadays part of Creative Assembly, by the way, and are working on Total War. So the developers have set 3 pillars for their development process, and those are for the game to be immersive, easy to learn but hard to master. It has to be fun, even at the expense of historical accuracy, so I'm a bit taken aback by that, but they still want to keep some historical accuracy as far as it is possible. And that might be interesting for many people, to make it both single and multiplayer heavy. So both should receive the same attention by the developers. That is a major improvement over Knights of Honor 1 that didn't have a multiplayer. So what else do we know by now? They are aiming for around 300 provinces in largely Europe, Eastern Europe, also North Africa, similar to Medieval 2. And probably Knights of Honor 1. There are 3 different starting points in the 12th century, the 13th century, and the 14th century. With especially the 12th and 13th century aiming for a more interesting dynamic around the 4 major religions of the game, that there are pagans, northern pagans that is, Islam, Catholic, Christianity, and Greek Orthodox Christianity. Of course, that means already major nations exist, like the Holy Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire, but nonetheless, I think there's enough room for smaller kingdoms. By the way, the devs are putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that they want their game to be really moddable, so that sounds good for everyone that liked Medieval 2 and the old Knights of Honor. For that, they made an excellent map creation kit from what I can read in the dev blogs, so I'm looking forward to the stuff you can do, because they specifically mention Mordor and the Game of Thrones world here. So, yeah, that sounds interesting. The system is the same as in the old Knights of Honor. You have a central city that controls a whole province, and control of the city means control of the province. Though apparently it goes a bit deeper. There seems to be something called keeps. I get some kind of castle. So apparently there will be smaller positions that I guess you can build in certain provinces that stay in your possession even when the major city falls, or the other way around, that you can conquer without conquering the city. Provinces seem to have a certain loyalty rating that declines or rises depending on who controls the province. And the population mechanics seem to be very interesting, because they mentioned that people will try to move from areas where a war is going on and plundering and such. So apparently refugees seem to be a thing here, which I really like. That's an interesting mechanic, that your province might lose population to other provinces when they are fleeing. What else? Oh yeah, combat system seems to be a bit less than in Total War, as the focus is more on the strategical level, but nonetheless interesting. Your armies will need a leader, and if the leader dies, the army disbands, so that's not good. Combat is set to last for around 15 to 20 minutes. Probably a bit longer for really big battles, I guess. They didn't say how many troops you can send into a single battle, but I think I read something around 10 to 15 units is the maximum usually. I guess they are a bit bigger than in Total War though, because the army sizes seem to be more realistic. Yeah, a very big thing are the advisors, that are much more important than in Crusader Kings here. You have a certain number of knights that fulfill different roles, like marshal, of course, the more military-minded guys, diplomats, merchants and such, clerics. They all have their own actions that they can do, and they can actually govern certain provinces, making them royal lands, so they are not just governed by feudal lords loyal to you, but by your own direct advisors, and thus under your direct control. And sounds like a more intricate system than the current advisor system from Crusader Kings 2, and I like that a lot. Also very interesting is that you apparently can annex provinces even before a war ends by simply holding them for a very long time. So a bit different from what you can do in Crusader Kings. Sounds a bit more realistic actually. So yeah, definitely a game I'm looking forward to. The next title came as a huge surprise for me, but it was about time somebody was actually trying to push civilization off the throne of turn-based strategy, and that is Humankind. Well, that's a title. Yeah, it's done by Amplitude Games, and the publisher is Sega, the guys behind Total War. So Amplitude, the developer studio, are those guys that made the Endless games. So that's very interesting. They have quite a lot of experience with turn-based strategy there, obviously. And Humankind looks absolutely stunning from the graphics alone. So that's a nice change, because while the Civ games don't look ugly, they certainly aren't top-notch graphics. But of course, graphics are not really important in a strategy game, so what else do they have for us? Well, the basic idea is the same, more or less, than Civilization, but with a certain twist to it. In Civilization, I was often taken aback a bit by the playable nations that you have in the game. Russians, Germans, 4000 BC? Strange, isn't it? Well, Humankind does it another way. You have your starting nations that are typical ancient nations like the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians. But over time you will change these nations into more modern ones. So that's a very interesting twist. So you are evolving your nation into other, more modern cultures. In their dev videos, they feature things like the influence of other nations on the Egyptians, that they were influenced by the Greek, conquered by Alexander, through the Arabians and such. It sounds very interesting. Also that one of the starting nations are the Nubians that were located to the south of Egypt, and at one point they were conquered by the Egyptians, and then the Nubians conquered the Egyptians in turn, and there seems to be a lot of friction between the various cultures, and they seem to influence each other in their development. That sounds really interesting, with a very interesting twist to it. Very realistic also, much more than Civilization, and I like the idea. Yeah, remains to be seen how this one plays out, because there will of course be a lot of cherry picking, I guess. But nonetheless, sounds very interesting what options you might get here with your cultural development. Otherwise, it seems to be Hexfeld again. I think I said that. Military system is basically the same as you are used to. There haven't been too many details released yet, sadly, about the resource system and such, but it all looks very civish, which isn't a bad thing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Finally a contender for Civilization. It's about time. Remains to be seen how the AI will play out. Hopefully we avoid a catastrophe like in Civ 6, but we'll see. The next game is about to release in a few days and has been in buyer's beta, when you want to call it that way, already. And that is Panzer Corps 2. I'm a huge fan of Panzer Corps 1, that in turn was basically a reimagination of the famous Panzer General series. And Panzer Corps 2 attempts something that Panzer General tried to, and that is translating the game into 3D. That didn't work out too well for Panzer General, but I think it will work out pretty well for Panzer Corps 2, because they are keeping the core features of the game. But they are changing a few things that seem to be very good. The old Panzer Corps had a limited overrun mechanic, where you could overwhelm enemy units. They surrendered when surrounded and hit by an attack that basically made them retreat. Now overrunning is something that tanks can do without actually attacking or moving. So that's a very nice thing. When an enemy unit is too weak to withstand tanks, then it gets overrun. I like that. Also new encirclements now that you can... the old game had a feature where units that were close to enemy units couldn't supply fully, and if encircled, they couldn't supply at all. Now there are supply routes with supply depots, and the map border actually being a supply depot in full. And if an enemy unit can't trace a way to a supply depot or the map border, it runs out of supply, and it gets worse over time. I really like that. That's a great idea to make units that you manage to cut off weaker, and extremely looking forward to playing this. Another thing is that you are now able to split units, so not just encircling them the regular way, but you can weaken your units intentionally by splitting them up, and thus, especially with tanks, creating more or less an increasing wave of encirclements. That sounds absolutely stunning. It's a great idea. Captured units are again in the game. In Panzer Corps 1 you were able to get certain special Beute units, as I like to call them. So captured equipment from fulfilling special requirements of a mission or reaching secret locations on the map. And then you received a unit. Now it's so that captured units that you made surrender or overrun will add their equipment to the equipment pool, and at some point you are able to create a unit from this captured equipment. And that sounds really interesting. Anyone wants to overrun some KV-1s, probably? Heroes are back in the game again, but reward, you can now switch them between units, and they provide very unique options for the units they are on. You again have slots, as it was in the first game, but this time your unit slots are multifaceted. So some units need more than one slots, and some heroes reduce the usage of slots to 0 of certain units. So, wow, you can place more of these units. Sounds great. Air units, naval units, and land units still need the same slots. And there we are with the next thing. Air War is now a bit less taxing because you don't forget some units on low fuel and they just drop from the sky and die. They always return to their airfields now, but of course they are now tied to the airfields, so it's more difficult to get them in range of the enemy units. Capturing airfields thus will be very important. And naval warfare has been hugely improved upon because not only do certain unit types of your navy now support each other, for example, destroyers support ships that are under U-boat attack, and others give AA to their surrounding units, and all ships give each other gun cover, but also the facing of turrets, the way the turrets are facing on a ship, and the way the ship is facing are now important, contrary to land units. And carriers are now basically mobile airfields. It all sounds much more intricate, and apparently they are aiming for something like naval-only campaigns. There's even seem to be different stages of water depth, because they said that naval units are providing supporting fire for land units that are next to them, but only light units like destroyers can actually get close to the coast. So that sounds really interesting for naval invasion scenarios. Talking about naval invasions and such, and supporting fire especially, transports are again in, naval transports and land transports, and even air transports again, but they work a bit differently. You had a problem in Panzer Corps 1 that when you moved a unit on a transport point, that you could embark this unit and send it on the way, and that was it. You couldn't move another unit there. This is different now. No, you couldn't send them on the way, that was a problem. Now you can move on the point, embark, and send a unit on their way, so you can use one point to send your whole army on the way to the target. Of course, they are then still in their transports, and that makes them vulnerable, so only do this with, caution, but it sounds much more intricate than in the first game, makes of course something like railway transports more important. Supporting fire has been changed a bit. It works the same way as in the last game, when you have a supporting fire unit next to a regular unit, and the regular unit gets attacked and gets supporting fire from the supporting fire unit, light artillery behind it. But the thing is that AT guns weren't really used in the last game because they were a frontline unit that could only fight tanks. That has been changed. AT units are now supporting units aimed at tanks, so put them behind your infantry and they will help defend the infantry against tanks with supporting fire. Sounds really interesting, and I like the addition. What else? There were already quite a lot of changes. Oh yeah, in the last game, in Panzer Corps 1, you could get badges for your unit, like the Iron Cross and such, and they didn't mean anything. Just a kill count, basically. And now they give small buffs, and they are not transferable like the heroes. They already released a lot of information on this, and oh yeah, it will have a huge multiplayer with randomized maps and a whole new AI that is able to read the maps, and you can actually give settings to the AI so she behaves in a certain way, but it sounds extremely cool. A terrain-adaptable AI that's basically like the golden cow of AI development. When it works, great. Yeah, so all the details that we know about Panzer Corps sound absolutely stunning, and wow, it's only a few days until release, and can't wait. Can't wait, absolutely not. And now, on place 1, a somewhat surprising thing, I would guess, for some of you, and that is Empire of Sin. Yeah, from Romero Games and Paradox Interactive, so they actually teamed up with the Romeros. That's incredibly cool. I mean, John Romero is a legend of the gaming development, in good and bad terms at the same time. But nonetheless, very interesting person, and the game sounds very interesting. You're playing or building crime empire in stoppable semi-real time, as you're used from Paradox, and the battles turn into XCOM style turn-based tactics combats, and wow, I like the combination of that. I mean, firing Tommy guns and throwing dynamite at enemy mobsters, right down my alley. I love the gangsters games, so this seems really good. Apparently, it's set in Chicago, and of course the 1920s, probably 1930s, and you get 14 different bosses that are struggling for control of the city and increasing their criminal empires. You have to defend your territory, you have to expand it with trade, apparently. Some kind of trade, of course, illegal trade, like alcohol of the time, Prohibition era. Sadly, they haven't released that many details on it yet, but what we have seen from the gameplay so far looks interesting. Turn-based combat differently. I think I saw something like suppressive fire from a Tommy gun. Apparently your squad members, so mobsters, will have certain abilities like sneaking and close combat, or distracting enemies. Apparently women are in, so sounds like there will be some options for you in combat. I'm interested in it because I love the old gangsters games and Pizza Syndicate and such. Sadly, it has been delayed already a bit. It seems like Romero has somewhat of a history there, but we'll see what comes from it. Not much more to tell about it right now, but it should release this year, but who knows. Nonetheless, looking forward to it. And well, what would this be without another honorable mention, and that is a game that I'm sadly not expecting to release this year, Age of Empires 4. I just recently found my copy of Age of Empires 1 again. a physical copy, the CD. Yeah, up on the attic. Actually thought my stepbrother had stolen it from me, but, well, he hadn't. Forgot it. He stole it, but forgot it when he moved out. Well, now I got it back, but Age of Empires 4 sadly not. It's set again in the Middle Ages. Not that much known about it yet. Only one gameplay trailer that didn't really show gameplay, but more, I don't know, something. Combat between apparently the English and the Mongols. Only what I know is that the factions will be much more different than we were used to from the previous Age games, which is a good thing, from what I can tell. And, well, we'll see if they get it released this year. I don't expect it, but would be cool if they do. Well. That's it for today, and yeah, hopefully see you soon. We're almost at 5,000 subscribers, so people, please subscribe, and maybe take a look at my social media accounts. Every now and then I'm pretty active there, more active than I am currently on YouTube. I hope that gets better quickly. Anyway, thanks to my patrons for still supporting me, and those people over on Twitch, always taking a look at my videos and streams. Well, I hope I see you on the next video soon.